What is up, you spooky bitches? We are back with another episode of the Hello Sidney podcast here, a podcast for horror lovers where we discuss any and all things horror. And it's me, your girl, Sidney, wearing my brand new Stephen King sweatshirt. If you guys are watching the video episode, it says based on the novel by Stephen King. I got it off some random website. I am like the target audience for Instagram ads, like when they put up ads for clothes or literally for whatever. I most likely will buy it. So I saw this and it took me about 3.5 seconds to buy it from some like sketchy sounding website. But I always take my chances. And honestly, it ends up fine because look, I got it. So it's my new favorite sweatshirt. I love it. Would have been really appropriate if I had this during Stephen King month, but it's okay because we're going to have another Stephen King month. So we'll just use it then. It's totally fine. Today, we're continuing our conversation we've been having about Friendsgiving and friends getting themselves into really bad situations that they somehow have to find a way out of, find a way to defeat said thing. Sometimes they turn on each other. And this movie is an example of that because at the end, we're going to have some people turn on each other here. And I think the choices that are made are interesting, but The Cabin in the Woods is kind of a black comedy. Like it's a satire and it's very meta. And I feel like it's the first movie that came out since Scream to do meta and to do it completely right. I love how self-aware this movie is. I love how they take their classic, like your classic cabin in the woods story and make it something totally different. I remember the first time watching this movie genuinely being surprised, like genuinely being shocked because you hear the name of it. And I remember when the trailers came out for this, like it made it seem like it was just a cabin in the woods movie. Like, oh, these kids are going to a cabin in the woods. They're going to read some stupid shit in the basement, rise this zombie family and be attacked. Like that's the formula of so many different horror movies. But no, this one completely turns it on its head, makes it something completely different. And I love it so much. And this movie is often regarded, like it's on a lot of lists of like, oh, top 100 horror movies of all time. If you look at a lot of lists, it'll be there. And I think it deserves to be because I think it's a perfect movie. I think it's hilarious. I think it has all the tropes in it, but it doesn't do it in a boring way because sometimes some of the tropes in here are so overused and it gets to the point where it's like, oh, this again. It makes it completely different. I love this movie so much. The comedic relief is perfect, and I just think it's phenomenal. It's written by these two guys, Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard, and Drew Goddard actually ended up directing the movie as well. And they had wrote this a long time ago, and nobody wanted to pick it up for some reason. But eventually it did get picked up, and it got filmed in 2009. But some studio interference, some shit happened like it does with those big studios. And this movie actually wasn't released until 2012. So it took a few years to get it out there, but I'm so glad we eventually got it. And Drew Goddard, one of the writers / the director, actually got the inspiration for this movie from when he was growing up in New Mexico. And it must have been around a lab or some like sketchy establishment because he said that he would see a lot of scientists and just people in general coming and going to work every day like nothing was happening, but he knew that every day they were building like nuclear weapons that were capable of destroying the world. So that's kind of where this idea for this movie was born. So without further ado, let's get into The Cabin in the Woods. So if you look this movie up, it'll say that it came out in 2011. The dates are all fucked up. Filmed in 2009, says 2011, but it actually was released in theaters in 2012. Whatever. But its runtime is about an hour and 35 minutes. It has a 7 on IMDb and a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. That is really damn good for a horror movie. Really good. 7 on IMDb is crazy. 92% is crazy. So that just tells you how iconic this movie is, to be honest, like how great this movie is. They did such a great job with this film. And this movie opens up with a bunch of ominous music. And we start to see all these kind of like cave drawings, like all these ancient looking drawings. And it seems like it's drawings of gods and like human sacrifices. Like it looks like something you would see in a cave of like Neanderthal times or something. So we meet two of our main characters here. And this is going to be Hadley and Sitterson. And they're co-workers. They're wearing like white shirts, like white button-up shirts, and I think they might have ties on. Like they're very like professionally dressed, but they're kind of just shooting the shit. Like at first they're in the break room and they're talking about like Hadley trying to have a kid and lady issues that he's been having with his girlfriend, his wife, whoever. And then somebody comes up to them. It's this woman named Wendy, and she interrupts them to actually talk about work. What a concept. And she tells them that Stockholm just went south. And that means that there's just Japan and us. And Hadley and Sitterson don't seem bothered by this at all, because they're like, Japan has a perfect record and it wouldn't be the first time that we've had to take care of it ourselves. So like, don't worry, we're going to be fine. We haven't had a glitch since 98. So they don't seem worried about whatever the hell this is at all. And Hadley actually asks her if she's in the betting pool this year. And as they're having this conversation, Hadley and Sitterson are getting onto this little like golf cart little thing to drive off. And Hadley looks at Wendy and is like, oh yeah, and in 98, it was the chem department's fault. Remind me where you work again? And she just looks at him and he's like, oh, right. And he drives away. So like, who are these two divas? Like Hadley and Sitterson are such little divas and I love them, even though like they're technically supposed to be like the antagonist in this movie. So Hadley is just like talking at Sitterson as they're driving through. And eventually Hadley just looks at him and is like, are you even listening to me? And we get the opening credits like really abruptly with this really loud music. And now this opening seems off, and it's because they did this purposely. So they wanted audiences to feel like they walked into the wrong movie theater. Because again, if I remember properly, when this movie came out, it was just advertised as a Cabin in the Woods movie. So like suddenly you're in this lab with these two random guys and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this? But then you see the title card and you're like, okay, this is the right movie. That's almost even more confusing, but they purposely did this to throw people off. So now we cut to a college campus and we meet one of our main characters whose name is going to be Dana, and she's in her room. She's in her underwear, just like in the window. Like she has like these big ass like bay windows, and she's just like, she has a shirt on and she's in her underwear and she's packing. So clearly she's going somewhere, and she takes this notebook out and it's a sketchbook, and she opens it to this drawing of this man, and she looks at it like longingly. So you can tell this is a man that she's involved with in some way. And suddenly her friend Jules comes in, and Jules has blonde hair, and they comment on her hair because apparently she just dyed it, and Dana tells her that it looks great. And now Jules takes this picture from Dana, this picture of this man, and Dana just like immediately is trying to defend him. She's like, he's not ready, it's not his fault, which like, ladies, do not defend a man like this. Fuck that guy. It's not his fault, like blah, blah, blah. And Jules is like, what is not his fault? Like fucking his student or breaking up with her via email, which like, oh, hot damn. Okay. So that's interesting. But Jules then moves on and is like, well, Holden is really cute. And it turns out that they're going away this weekend. And Dana is nervous that Jules and her boyfriend Kurt are going to make this a setup. She's like, I don't want you to treat it like a setup and make it awkward. And Jules is like, don't worry, we won't. And she goes over to Dana's bag that she's packed for the weekend and sees that Dana has like fucking textbooks packed. So she takes them out and she's like, absolutely not. Like, you are not fucking bringing these on a weekend getaway to the lake. Like, absolutely not, you weirdo. So eventually Kurt comes in, who is played by Chris Hemsworth. And Kurt comes in and Holden is outside, like downstairs, and they can see him. And Kurt yells to him, we'll be right down. So it turns out they're both football players. That's how they met. So they all get ready to leave. Jules leaves, and then Kurt stays there for a second, and he looks down and he looks back up and he's like, you don't have pants on, and leaves. Like, everybody forgot that Dana was in her underwear. But eventually they all get outside and they pack up this big RV that they're taking to the lake that weekend. And all of a sudden this music starts bumping and this guy pulls up, and this is going to be our other main character, Marty. And he pulls up completely hotboxing this car, and he's got a coffee mug, or what looks like a coffee mug, but he actually hits it because it's also a bong. So it's a coffee mug bong. It's honestly kind of iconic. And this actually was made for the movie, and the prototype of this actually cost like $5,000, but it is real and it is functional. So he parks his car and gets out, and he locks the door but leaves his window completely down, which is hilarious to me. And that just like speaks to who Marty is and how much of a fucking stoner he is. But this coffee cup, when it's in the bong form, it's like really long. like it like pulls out, but then he can like push it back in and now it's just a regular coffee cup. So he pushes it back in and he just gets in the RV like nothing, and everybody's like, oh, Marty. So they all pack in and they're all excited and they drive off. But as they drive off, we hear this ominous music start to play, and we see that there is somebody watching them from the roof, and they have like an earpiece in and they like radio or talk to somebody and say the nest is empty, we're on time. So you're like, okay, what the fuck is going on here? So as they're driving, they all start to talk about how this place apparently belongs to Kurt's cousin and it has no cell phone service. So like immediate red flag. So they're like, we're going to be like really disconnected from everything for the first time in a while. And Marty chimes in. And again, Marty is like the stoner and he's absolutely a philosophy major. I can't prove that, but I just know it. But he starts talking about how everything is recorded these days and society needs to crumble, but we're all too chicken shit to admit it. And everybody else is like, oh, Marty, you're so silly. That will never happen. Ha ha ha. Lie detector determined that was a lie. So we now cut back to the lab and we see Sitterson and Hadley, and they go into this this lab area where there's all these screens and all these monitors and all these buttons and shit. And they meet this guy named Truman, who is clearly new, and he assures them that he's been prepped. And they're like, well, being prepped is not the same as being prepared. Like, this isn't an easy job. And the two of them sit down and they start to pull up videos and they say that they're acquiring the target. And again, you're at this point, you're still just like, what the fuck is anybody doing? Like, what does any of this mean? But eventually we cut back to the group and the RV pulls up to this like old dilapidated gas station and there's nobody around. And Holden eventually goes inside and he gets startled by this creepy ass old man who emerges from nowhere. And he follows Holden outside and he's just like super off-putting and like super rude. And they try to ask him for directions because Kurt explains his cousins bought a house up the road. And this old guy says that it's the Buckner place and he knew the original owners and he's seen plenty come and go since then. And I've been here since the war. Like, this guy is just like he's acting super odd. Like he's just strange. And he actually like insults Jules at one point and Marty stands up for her. And then that calls him to call Jules a whore, which causes Kurt to almost fight him. So now it just turns super tense all of a sudden. And eventually the old guy tells them, because Holden is like, are we going to have enough gas? And the old guy is like, you'll have enough gas to get there, but getting back is not my problem. Like, that's your concern. So everybody kind of backs off and they all get in the RV and this old man watches them eerily and suspiciously as they drive off. So they keep going and they drive over this like cliff area. Like, it's like a cliff in a side of a mountain. So the RV is driving and like the ledge is right next to them. And as this is happening, we see this bird flying through the air and this bird suddenly smacks something. And we see that there is like an invisible wall. And the reason that we can see it is because when the bird flies into it, it kind of like sparks. And we can see that there's something there. There's an invisible barrier and the bird dies. Like, the bird gets smashed and it like falls and dies. But eventually the group pulls up to the cabin and it looks just like the cabin in The Evil Dead. And The Evil Dead was a big influence on this movie. Like, you can very much tell that in the cabin. So they pull up to this cabin and they all go inside and they start looking around and they find their rooms. And Holden goes into his room and he sees that there's this like really creepy painting on the wall. It's like these people who are mutilating and killing an animal. And he's like, yeah, absolutely not. So he goes to take it off the wall and put it down. But when he does that, behind this painting is a mirror. But it seems to be a one-way mirror because he sees Dana in her mirror and we cut to Dana and we see that she's looking at herself in what she seems to think is a normal mirror, but Holden can only see her. And suddenly she starts to undress and Holden starts to panic. He's like, and then like he got kind of like he kind of like looks back like he's like, no. And he tells her, he's like, Dana, stop. Like, he taps on the wall. So everybody comes into his room and they all look at this mirror and they talk about how super creepy it is. And they're like, Kurt, like, where the hell did your cousin get this place? Like, what is up with this? So Holden is a gentleman. He's a really nice dude and he offers Dana to switch rooms. And like, I'm going to put the painting up, but still just so you're more comfortable, like, let's switch rooms. So she thanks him. She agrees. And they both kind of talk about how they know that this is a setup and they kind kind of laugh about it. And they get a little bit flirty until Dana like makes it really awkward. And they end up going their separate ways. But Holden goes into what was Dana's room. So now she can see him through this mirror. And he starts to take his shirt off and he's ripped. So Dana is kind of just like watching him shirtless, like hypnotized, which, girl, I would be too. He's super fucking hot. But then he starts to take his pants off and she panics. She's like, oh shit. So she grabs the painting and she puts it back up. But then she looks at what the painting is and she's like, yeah, no. So she puts a blanket over it. And as she's doing this, we start to zoom out and suddenly we see that everybody's being watched. There is a camera. There is a hidden camera in the corner of this room and in the corner of every room here. And we cut back to the lab and we see that they're watching all of these cameras. Like they have monitors up with all of these cameras on them. And Hadley and Sitterson are just watching all of this unfold. So Hadley then calls somebody to tell them about the room change of Dana and Holden. And he tells everybody to get in their places because shit's about to go down. So at this point, Wendy comes in and she starts talking about how I suggest an increase in like this chemical for a libido increase for Jules. And again, at this point, like it kind of makes no fucking sense. You're like, why are they doing this? Like, what is going on? But Wendy also tells Sitterson, like, guess how we're slowing down Jules's cognition? We put it in her hair dye. And Sitterson is like, oh, dumb blonde trope, like very smart. I'm impressed. And Wendy is like, yeah, the chem department keeps up their end, and kind of like side eyes Hadley for that comment that he had made to her earlier. So Hadley gets a call from somebody who tells him that the Harbinger is online too. And at first they're like, oh, can you tell him that we're not here? But the guy is like, honestly, like he's really pushy and he's kind of freaking me out. So they're like, okay, put him through. So Hadley greets Mordecai. And this is the old guy that was in the gas station. So he's also known as the Harbinger. And he's being super fucking cryptic. He's saying shit like, the lambs have crossed through the gate. They have come to the killing floor. And Hadley tries to like end the conversation really quick because he obviously wants nothing to do with this guy. But Mordecai keeps going on just being super weird and cryptic. And he's talking about how we have to cleanse the world of their ignorance and sin. But then suddenly he stops mid-sentence because Hadley has him on speakerphone and he can tell. And he asks, he's like, am I on speakerphone? And Hadley is like, no, like absolutely not. And he's like, yo, don't worry. Like, I'll take you off. It'll be fine. And the Harbinger's like, okay. And then he goes on just being completely fucking weird. He's like, the fool nearly derailed the invocation with his insolence. The ancient ones see everything. And now everybody starts to laugh at this point because they just think this guy is ridiculous. And he's like, am I on speakerphone again? Like, this is just such a comedic moment. It's so funny to me. So we cut back to the house and we see that the group is all at the lake. They're all in bathing suits. They all jump off the dock with the exception of Marty, who is clothed. Like he has a towel and a bathing suit on, but he has a shirt on. And Marty is like a typical stoner. Like he's wearing a long sleeve shirt under a short sleeve shirt. And it turns out the reason that he actually has a shirt on in this scene and he doesn't jump in the lake is because this actor is so fucking ripped, apparently, that they were like, yeah, that kind of takes away from your like lazy stoner persona. So like, we actually need you to keep your clothes on, brother, because you're too hot, which is utterly hilarious. So back in the lab, we see that Sitterson is taking money for bets. And he's saying to everybody, like, okay, last chance. Like, every department has to bet on something. And Sitterson, like, makes fun of Hadley for picking the merman. And they kind of talk about it, about how Hadley's like, I need to see a merman at least once in my life. Like, I want it to be the merman. And now Wendy looks at that guy Truman, who looks super uncomfortable. And she goes up to him. And he says that he's not betting because she asks him. And she's like, listen, I know it seems harsh, but like we're just letting off some steam. It's not an easy job. And Truman asks if the director knows about this. And Hadley is like, oh, the director doesn't care what we do as long as everything goes smoothly and the kids do what they're told. And Truman gets kind of confused at that because he's like, how can you wager on this when you control the outcome? And now Sitterson, I think it is, jumps in and is like, we just get them in the cellar. Like they're the ones that have to make the choice of their own free will. We don't control that. And if they don't use free will, then the system doesn't work. Just like the Harbinger, we put him in place because the kids have to choose to ignore him. Like they have to choose his warning, to ignore his warnings and still continue on anyway. We rig the game if we need to, but otherwise, again, it's all their choices. And Truman still doesn't bet. Like, he still seems uncomfortable by this whole thing. But now we're kind of understanding more what's going on here. We don't know why this is going to happen to them yet, but we understand that they're putting all of this in place and something very bad is about to happen to them. So Sitterson is like, let's get this party started. And at the same time, Kurt says the exact same thing. And they're all in the house. They're dancing, they're drinking, and they start to play Truth or Dare. Marty dares Jules, go make out with that moose head. And everybody turns and it's very clearly a wolf head. And Marty is just high as fuck, which again, amazing. And Jules ends up like making out with this thing as they all kind of like watch and laugh about it. Everybody's having fun. And they go to ask Dana next, and Kurt assumes that she's going to pick Truth because he's kind of like implying that Dana is kind of weak here. Like Dana is kind of boring. So Dana gets kind of annoyed with this and she's like, okay, then you know what? Dare. And as she says dare, they all get startled because behind her, this cellar door just like violently shoots open. Like it blows right open. And they're all like, what the hell is that? And Kurt says, the wind must have blown it open. And Marty chimes in and he's like, how does that make any sense? And it's at this point, I remember watching this movie that I'm like, I love Marty. I love this man. And I love this movie because now you understand where it's going. Like it's going to be all of those horror tropes of like, oh, it must have been the wind. Let's go investigate this strange noise. Let's split up. And Marty is the one that's like, what the fuck are you talking about? So they all look down into the darkness and they wonder what's down there. And Jules suggests they go down. And she's like, you know what, Dana, I dare you to go down. So like she got her with that. So sure enough, Dana does start to go down and it's completely dark except for the flashlight that she's carrying. And she looks around and she just starts seeing all these weird things. Like there's a bunch of doll masks and there's like these old timey pictures and there's just a bunch of random shit. There's a portrait of this little girl and that portrait actually startles her and she screams and that causes all the others to come down. But Marty lights a lantern and they can see just a bunch of shit down there. Like this basement is filled with a bunch of random shit. And they're all looking around and Marty is trying to tell everybody like, hey, I don't think we should be down here touching everything. And sure enough, everybody is down there touching everything. Like the group, everybody else is like picking up different shit. And Marty just keeps being like, we should go back upstairs. And like nobody responds. And he's like, I dare you all to go back upstairs. Like he's trying to do anything he can to get them out of this creepy ass basement. And again, they all just keep touching stuff. And like we see Holden is touching this music box with a ballerina in it. And Jules is near this wedding dress that has a necklace on it that she's messing with. Kurt is messing with this like circular puzzle box. So it's kind of like a Hellraiser puzzle box, but a circle instead of a square. And Dana is looking at this diary, like they're all playing with something. And this like intense music is playing as we keep like cutting back between the four of them, zooming in on these things that they have. And Dana is the one that speaks first. So Dana says it distracts them all from their objects. So she speaks and she says like, guys, come look at this. So she's holding this diary and she reads a passage out loud and it's from this little girl. And this passage is about wanting to prove her devotion. And it turns out it's the diary of Anna Patience Buckner from 1903. And this diary goes on to say, Mama screamed most of the night and only stopped when Papa cut her belly and stuffed the coals inside. And everybody's like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is kind of creepy. And this diary goes on to say, like, I want to understand the glory of the pain. Cutting the flesh makes him, talking about, I think, her brother, cutting the flesh makes him have a husband's bulge, which, like, what a way to fucking put that. And now Marty is the only one that chimes in and is like, yeah, you should stop reading that. Like, stop reading that out loud. And she goes on, like, she continues reading and she's saying, like, the passage is saying, I found a way of saving our family. My good arm has been hacked up. So this girl, whoever is writing this diary, is missing an arm. And I hope this is readable and that a believer will come and speak this out loud. So our spirits then will be restored and the great pain will return. And then there's something written in Latin. And Marty is like, yeah, do not read the Latin. And this scene cracks me up every time because they're all standing in a line and suddenly there's a voice that just whispers, read it. And the only person to even fucking flinch is Marty. And he's like he's looking around and it's just so funny, like the juxtaposition of this, how like everybody else is just looking at the diary. Like they didn't even hear that and they don't even think it's weird. But Marty's like, something is wrong here, people. So he literally hears this voice say, read it. And he looks around and nobody fucking heard that or like cared to hear that. So at this point, he tries to physically grab the book from Dana, but she grabs it back and she starts reading this dumb shit anyway. And she starts to read this Latin passage. And as she's reading it, we cut to outside and we see this hand come out of the dirt and this zombie creature just emerge and start to crawl out. And it's not just one, it's multiple. And we cut back to the lab and we see Sitterson say, "We have a winner. It's the Buckners. That means congratulations to the maintenance department," because they're the ones that bet on this. And Ronald the intern, they split it because they both bet on the same thing. But as he's saying this, he's standing in front of this board. I'll put a picture up here and I'll like explain to you guys what some of the creatures on this board are later, because there's a shit ton and some of them are really funny. So I love this movie so much. So apparently whoever bet on this one won, because this is the one that they raised. And somebody comes up to Sitterson and is like, "That's not fair. I had zombies too." And Sitterson was like, "Well, you had regular zombies. This is zombie redneck torture family. It's totally different." It's actually two completely different things. So now we understand that they went into the basement. Something is happening. They're pumping something into the air, which we will see them do later, to make these people make stupid fucking decisions. But Marty is the only one that is seemingly immune to it and is able to be like, "No, guys, let's not go in the creepy basement and read the creepy Latin passage." And I just love this movie so much because it's just like making fun of how stupid people are in horror movies. But there's a reason that they're stupid in this horror movie. Because again, like so many movies like fucking Evil Dead, which this is based on, like they listen to this thing and like listen to the Latin passage and that's what raises the dead. Or like in Evil Dead 2013, he straight up reads the fucking Latin words from the book like a dumbass. So I love so much how this movie pokes fun at those classic tropes, where it's the tropes really just this group of friends being fucking stupid. So I love that they're making fun of that here. It's so funny to me. And now we understand that like in the basement, all those different like little relics and things that they have, whichever one they picked would have resurrected something different. And that's why all the workers are taking bets on this. So Dana resurrected the zombie redneck torture family, aka the Buckners. So in the lab, they can see the Buckners resurrected. Like they have a camera outside and it sees them coming towards the house. And Truman says to Wendy, like, "There's something from a nightmare. Like they're terrifying." And Wendy is like, "Well, everything in our stable, like all of our creatures pretty much, is reminiscent of the old world, courtesy of you know who. You'll get used to it." So again, we still don't really understand what this means, but we'll figure it out later. But Sitterson looks at Hadley and he says, "I'm sorry." He's like, "Sorry, like the merman didn't work out for you." And Hadley's all upset. He's like, "He had the conch in his hands." Like, because I think Holden at first like picked up a conch shell and was looking at it. He's like, "He had the conch in his hands. I'm never going to see a merman ever." Like Hadley's so upset that they did not pick the merman. And Sitterson is like, "You should be thankful. Like they're terrifying." And at this point, they look at the Buckners and they're like, "They might be pain-worshipping backwoods idiots, but they're our pain-worshipping backwoods idiots." And they kind of like laugh about that. I mean, you got to have a good time. So they see the Buckners coming and they joke about how they should call Japan and tell them to cut it off. Like, you guys don't need to do it. Like, we'll take care of it pretty much. And we look at the monitors and we see in Japan, there is also one of these rituals happening. But this one is like a Japanese ghost girl. And this ghost girl is terrorizing this room full of like little Japanese school children. But we notice that all the screens all around that all say fail. So this is happening all over the world, but there's ways to beat it. It says fail. So now back in the cabin, Jules is dancing like a stripper, pretty much. Like she is like very sexually dancing in front of everybody. And like everybody looks super uncomfortable except for Kurt, who was like super into it. And Kurt tells everybody to loosen up. Like, dude, that's your girlfriend. And Jules is like sexually dancing on Holden and like goes over to Marty. And Marty just straight up ignores her. And he's like, "I have a theory about all this." Like Marty is just in his own world. And Kurt is like, "Okay, that's our cue to bail." So he takes Jules and the two of them go outside. And now Marty goes to Dana and he's like, "You don't think any of this is weird? Like Jules is suddenly acting like an idiot and like Kurt is acting like an alpha male jock when like that dude is on academic scholarship. Like he's brilliant. This is not him at all." And Dana is trying to be like, "Oh, they're just drunk. Like, don't worry about it." And Marty is like, "Or maybe it's something else and you're seeing it, puppeteers." And he says that, and Dana looks at him like he's crazy and is like, yeah, you're just high. And she walks away. So we cut to Holden, who has that diary still from the basement, and he's still reading it. And he translates some of the Latin, because apparently he took Latin in college. And now outside, we see Kurt and Jules, and they're just like frolicking through the woods, and they start to make out, and he tries to take her shirt off. And in the lab, we see everybody is watching this like in silence, like they're just like hypnotized by this. And suddenly Jules says that she's chilly. So Hadley is like, all right, everybody, like get back to work. And they increase the temperatures in the woods. So they have total control over this space where they are. So they literally increase the temperature in the woods so it gets nice and warm. And then they say, putting out pheromone mists. And we see this mist start coming out of the plants and in the woods. So Jules and Kurt start kissing, and she's like, oh, come on, not here. It's dark. So then they hear that in the lab, and they up the moonlight. So now there's like this like beautiful like moonlit little area in the woods. So they go to lay down on that, and they're kissing, and Hadley and Sitterson are like, show us the goods, like come on. And Truman chimes in, and he's like, why does that matter? Like, why does she have to get naked? And they're like, well, it doesn't really matter. It's just that we're not the only ones watching. Like, do you understand what's at stake here? So Kurt starts to take her shorts off, and she gets on top of him and takes her shirt off. And again, like I love how every trope here is covered. Like, oh, it's always like the girl has to take her clothes off and get naked. And here it's explained that, yeah, because we're not the only ones watching. There's people watching that want to see that. So now Kurt gets back on top of her, and they're kissing, and the music starts to intensify. So we know that something's about to go down. And sure enough, we zoom in on her hand, which is kind of like out in the dirt. And as we zoom in on her hand, we see this knife just stab straight fucking through it. And she starts screaming, and Kurt gets up and sees this zombie creature, and he tackles it. And he gets up and he goes over to her, but then suddenly he is stabbed in the back by this fucking zombie. And he starts fighting this one off, and he pulls the knife out, but then another zombie shows up with this bear trap on a chain. Like it is dragging this bear trap on a chain, which like honestly, 10 out of 10 weapon. Never seen that before, have never seen it since. I think that's so fucking badass and freaky. So this dude swings this chain, and he knocks Kurt out, and Jules tries to run, but this thing then throws the bear trap at her, and it like sticks into her back, and he just pulls her back in one swift motion, like effortlessly. So he pulls her back and he drags her off, and he proceeds to pick Jules up, and another one of the zombies picks up Kurt and forces him to watch as this other creature pulls out a giant saw and decapitates Jules in front of Kurt. So in the lab, Sitterson and Hadley are watching this kind of somberly, and they kind of bow their heads, and they say, this we offer in humility and fear for the blessed peace of your eternal slumber as it ever was. So this is ritualistic as fuck, as we can tell by now. And Hadley pulls a lever, and we see down somewhere these like gears start to shift, and this vial of blood is broken, and it spills into this stone that is carved in a shape that we don't see yet. But now back in the cabin, Marty is reading a book, and he hears somebody whisper to him, and he looks around all freaked out again, and he says out loud, he's like, I swear someone is talking again. And this voice repeats, and they're saying, I'm going to go for a walk. And he freaks out. He's like, what do you want? Like, you think I'm a puppet? I'm the boss of my own brain. Give up. And then he's like, I'm going to go for a walk. So it worked. Like he was indeed inspired to go for a walk like they wanted. So Dana and Holden, meanwhile, are like making out in the living room. And eventually she stops, and she's like, I've never. And she's like, well, I don't mean never. And he assures her, like, you don't have to do anything you don't want. And as this is happening, Marty's walking by, and he goes, he's got a husband's bulge, and just walks out the door. Marty is so funny to me. Like, Marty is a perfect character to me. I love him so much. But Marty eventually goes outside, and he notices that there's no stars in the sky. So like, red flag. And he's like, that's strange. And he just says out loud, he says, we are abandoned. Interesting. And as he's saying this, he's facing the lake, and we see something moving towards him behind him, but he doesn't notice this. But then suddenly out of the darkness, Kurt shows up running and grabs him and tells him to run. And they start running back to the cabin, and Kurt like knocks out this thing that was behind him, which is this creepy ass little girl. He knocks her out in the process, and they both run into the house, and it's utter fucking chaos because Dana gets up and she's like, where's Jules? And Kurt just looks at them and is like, she's gone. and we got to get out of here. And Dana, trying to be the hero, is like, well, I'm not leaving without Jules. He just fucking told you that she's gone, dude. Like, she's fucking dead. So this bitch opens the front door, and standing right there is this giant zombie creature that killed Jules with the bear trap thing. And he picks up her decapitated head and just throws it right in at Dana. And Dana catches it and screams. And it's like, yeah, Kurt fucking told you this already. So now the guys run to close the door, and the zombie is trying to push its way in. So it takes all of them on the door, and eventually Dana helps, and they manage to close it. And Kurt looks at all of them, and he's like, there's more of them too. Like, there's more than just the one. And Marty says that that little girl was missing an arm. And at this point, Dana realizes from the diary passage, that's the girl that wrote the diary. That's Patience Buckner. So Kurt is like, we have to go around, we have to barricade this place, and the most important thing is we have to stay together no matter what. And we cut to the lab, and Hadley is just like, ugh, fuck. They're so upset about this. They're like, God damn it. And Sitterson is like, calm down, watch me work. And he presses this button, and we see that there is like this little thing, this little trap thing in the ceiling that opens up, and it blows out all this mist into the cabin. And Kurt walks through this invisible mist, and it looks like he kind of like, he can smell it, or he walks into it and something happens, and he turns at everybody and he says, wait a second, this isn't right. We should split up. And again, like, it's just the classic horror trope of like, why does everybody always want to fucking split up in situations like this? Now there's a reason. They're literally being drugged to split up. But it's just, I love how they do this. It's so clever. But Holden agrees, and Marty, again, the only logical one here, is very confused. He's like, no, what the fuck? But then suddenly something bursts through the front door, and Kurt tells them all to get in their room. So they all start running, and they go into their separate rooms, and Hadley presses a button, and this locks them in. So they're now all locked in their separate rooms, and all of their doors slam shut. And now we cut to Marty first, and he closes the window. And as he's closing the window, he breaks a lamp, and he notices something in the lamp, and he goes to pick it up. And Sitterson is like, oh, that's not good, because Marty finds a camera, and he's looking directly in it, and like they see on the monitor him looking directly at them. And Hadley is like, oh, we need Thorazine pumped into this room. And Sitterson is like, wait a second, because he sees Judah Buckner coming towards Marty's window. So he's like, he's going to take care of it, don't you worry. And now Marty is saying the whole place is rigged. Like, he sees that the whole place is rigged. He sees wires, he sees cameras in the ceiling now, like he's finding everything. And he's like, oh my God, I'm on a reality TV show. Like, poor Marty, he's so cute. And he's like, my parents are going to think I'm such a burnout. And as he's saying this, he's leaning against the window. And sure enough, the zombie bursts through the window and grabs him and drags him outside. But before he drags him out, Marty is able to reach and grab his like coffee cup bong thing, this iconic piece of equipment that he has. And he goes to stab Marty, but Marty rolls out of the way, and Marty stands up and extends his cup and just like smashes the fuck out of the zombie with it. But again, it's the undead, so it's not that fucking simple. And the zombie simply just stands back up and immediately looks at him and starts coming after him. So Marty runs, but the zombie throws a knife at his back, which causes Marty to fall. And the zombie goes to him and grabs him by the leg and just drags him away into the night. And we don't see this happen, but we can hear screams as somebody is being stabbed. Like, we can hear like a knife going into flesh. So Hadley goes and he pulls another lever, assuming that they've taken care of Marty, and more blood fills a second rock shape, like a shape carved into this stone. And this one is in the shape of a person, like seemingly holding a martini glass. So at this point, the whole lab starts shaking, and they make a comment about how like, oh, they must be getting excited downstairs. So now Dana is in her room, and suddenly a zombie bursts through the window and starts grabbing at her. But she manages to like push a dresser in front of the window, and she tries to get out of the room, but again, the door is locked, so she can't. But then suddenly Holden smashes that one-way mirror and pulls her out that way. So now they're both in his room, and they barricade their window, and they use the bed to do that. And as they move the bed to cover the window, they notice that there's a trap door in the floor. So they open it and they go down, and Kurt is outside and he can't open the door because, again, it's all locked, and they yell at him to get down to the basement. So Dana and Holden get down there, and Dana sees like all these tools down there, these old, dirty, rusty tools. And she's like, this is the black room from the diary where he killed them and where he's going to kill us. And Holden tries to calm her down. He comforts her. He's like, listen, like, we have to find a door. Like, let's check the walls. But then suddenly Holden is hit in the back with that fucking bear trap and he starts to be dragged up. But Dana is like, absolutely fucking not. And she grabs him and she pulls him back down and she stabs the zombie through the head with a crowbar that she grabbed. And he like dies for a second, but then wakes up again and he pulls this own crowbar out of his own head and she starts to stab him repeatedly in the chest. And she does this until he stops moving for the time being. So back in the lab, Hadley is watching this and is like, ugh, remember when you could just throw a girl in a volcano? Like basically like when they didn't fight back, which is hilarious again. And now back in the basement, Kurt startles them. So he gets down there, he startles them, but he grabs them and they all run and they go through this door to the outside, and Dana is wondering where Marty is, and Kurt just says they got him. So they all run to the RV and they all get in, but we see that on the outside of the RV door, they didn't notice that there is a bloody handprint on it. So now we're back in the lab and we're looking at the monitor of what's happening in Japan. And we see all these little Japanese schoolgirls singing a song, holding hands in a circle around this ghost, and they fucking vanquish it. They defeat this ghost and it turns into a little frog. And one of the girls picks up the frog and is like, her spirit will live in this frog. And they all cheer, like they all like scream like, yay, everything's great. We saved the day. And Sitterson is watching this and he's just like, fuck you. Fuck you. Like he's saying this to these kids. He's like truly like, fuck these kids. He's like, and he sees a bunch of kids and he's like, fuck you and fuck you and fuck you. It's utterly wonderful. It's such a great scene. So Wendy sees this and she's like, oh, Japan has a perfect record, huh? Like, I guess not anymore. And he's pissed. He's like, how hard is it to kill 9-year-olds? Like, what the fuck? So they start flipping through the screens and we see that everywhere else is failing. So we see that there's a screen that says Stockholm and this one is supposed to be The Thing. So these are all references to different horror movies. And it's like kind of a blink and you'll miss it thing. Like you really have to pay attention because it goes so fast. But Buenos Aires is supposed to be related to The Thing, but it says fail. And then the next one, or I'm sorry, Stockholm is supposed to be The Thing. And then they show Buenos Aires, which is supposed to be King Kong. And then they show Madrid, which is supposed to be Dracula, and all say fail. So the humans have succeeded in every one of these and the creatures have not been able to kill them. So Sitterson tries to tell Wendy, like, calm down. It's fine. The director trusts us. And they talk about what the hell is up with what Marty's been smoking because they're wondering, like, is that doing something here? Like, what was that? And Sitterson's like, it doesn't matter. He's dead. But Wendy is like, well, we're screwed if you don't get this under control. Like, you guys are our last hope if the ancients rise. And she's saying this on the phone. And suddenly they just, like, hang up. Like, he cuts her off. He's like, fuck that. And as this is happening, they see the RV driving away and Hadley starts to panic because he sees that there's no cave-in. And Sitterson is like, what? And Hadley's like, the tunnels are open. So now the two of them start to panic and Sitterson starts trying to call demolition and they're not answering. So he starts frantically running down the hallway to like the electrical department and he gets there and they're like, we didn't get the order. Like there must have been a glitch. We didn't get the order to blow the tunnel. So Sitterson like pushes them all out of the way and he's grabbing all these wires. And as this is happening, we see the group in the RV driving towards the tunnel, which is fully open. And now everybody in the lab is panicking. And eventually Sitterson connects this wire at the last second. And when he does this, suddenly the tunnel blows up in front of the three of their eyes. Like they're all just like, what the fuck? Like as they're about to drive through, it just blows up. So the RV starts reversing to get out and now they're fully stuck. And the three of them just kind of like sit there in silence and look at it and just wonder like, what the fuck is going on here? So they all try to think of what to do next. And remember, this is like a cliff area. So at first, there's no way across this cliff, but then Kurt has an idea and we see him on his dirt bike and the other two are nervous and Kurt is like, don't worry, I've done bigger jumps than this before. And Holden is like, you got to give it everything you got to get across. And Dana's super nervous and Kurt starts to give this like inspirational speech, which we always know, like when the inspirational speeches come out, it's fucking over for you, brother. Like we've learned that from Samuel L. Jackson from Deep Blue Sea. Like we all know. But he starts to tell them that he's going to go, he's going to get help, and I'm coming back with cops and choppers and guns, and we're going to make those things pay for what they did to Jules. And again, like inspirational music is playing in the background, and Dana like kisses him on the cheek as he prepares to go full speed to do this jump. And he backs up and he just again like full speed fucking runs at this cliff, and he starts to jump over it, and like they're watching like in awe, like, oh my God, he's going to make it. And then suddenly he hits that fucking invisible wall that we saw that bird hit earlier, and it all starts to like spark and kind of go haywire, and he dies immediately. Like he hits it and fucking drops and dies. And Dana and Holden are just like, what the fuck did we just see? Like Dana's screaming, she's crying, Holden's just in total disbelief, and they're like, what did he hit? Like what could he have possibly hit? And Dana finally chimes in and she's like, puppeteers. Marty was right. Like we're being puppeteered. Like this is all being controlled. And in the lab, they pull another lever and the blood starts to fill another outline. This time it's one of a jock. It's like a guy like throwing a javelin or something. So this is supposed to be the jock. And Holden and Dana get back in the van and they start driving back in the opposite direction. And they're talking about like, where the hell are we going to go? And Holden is like, we're just going to drive. Like there has to be another way. And Dana denies that. Like she's very hopeless at this point. And Holden tries to tell her like, I need you to keep it together. Like you're all I have now. I need you to be calm. And like, no matter what happens. And literally mid-sentence, a fucking zombie was in the RV the whole time. That's why we saw the handprint on the thing. And Holden just gets a knife straight through the neck. Like it goes in the back of his neck and out the front as he's driving. So he obviously fucking dies from this. Dana sees this. She screams. And the RV just goes fucking chaos all over the road. And it eventually drives off like a smaller cliff into water. So now Dana is in this RV submerged in water completely. And she eventually like manages to swim and get to like the sunroof thing or whatever the fuck you want to call it, the opening in the roof. And she opens it and she starts to swim up, but the zombie grabs her and tries to pull her back. She manages to push it off and eventually she does swim to the surface. And now in the lab, Sitterson and Hadley and Wendy are there and they all like crack a beer and they're all celebrating. And Truman is confused. He's like, but she's still alive. Like why is everybody celebrating? And they tell him that the virgin's death is optional as long as it's last. It doesn't matter what happens to her now. Like what matters is that she suffers. And then Hadley comes in and he starts to be like, it's weird. I find myself rooting for this girl. Like she's got so much heart and there's so much pain. And he's like getting like really sad. And then suddenly he sees somebody walk in and just mid-sentence turn and is like, tequila is my lady. Like he doesn't give a fuck. He actually doesn't care about this girl at all. So we cut back to Dana and she swims to the dock, which we know was the dock in front of the house. And she swims to the dock and she climbs up and she lays down and just cries. And then suddenly they're not done with her because this zombie shows up, the one with the fucking bear trap, and he just starts attacking her and beating her ass as she screams. And we zoom out and we cut back to the lab and this monitor is playing. So like she's being attacked and thrown around in the background as this music is playing. They're all celebrating. Everybody's drinking. They think they've won. Everybody like compliments Sitterson and Hadley for like a job well done. Everybody's talking, drinking, having fun. And Sitterson starts messing with the demolition department. And they're like, there was a power reroute from upstairs. And he's like, wait a second, what do you mean from upstairs? And then suddenly there's this red phone in the lab, which a red phone is never good. Like that's obviously like the emergency phone, and it starts to ring. And Hadley and Sitterson just like look at it and look at each other and they scream at everybody to turn the fucking music off. So Hadley goes over to the phone and he answers and he's like, that's impossible. The virgin is the only one. And then suddenly like the person on the other end says something and he looks up at the screen and he just says, which one? And we cut back and we see Dana just getting her fucking ass beat. And the zombie comes over to her to deliver the final blow when suddenly his weapon is pulled away from him. And behind him is Marty. Marty didn't fucking die, bitch. Marty defeated this thing. Marty's a bad bitch. So he pulls this thing's weapon away with his fucking coffee cup bong because the chain wraps around and he just pulls it. And Dana gets up and she grabs like a post or something and she knocks this zombie into the water and the two of them run. And we see the zombie emerge. Like it's obviously still not dead, but they run back towards the house and Marty directs her to get down into this like opening in the ground. And she's like, we're getting into the grave. And he's like, do you have a better plan? Like just shut the fuck up and get in the grave. So she hesitates, but she gets down there. And as they're getting down there, we see the little little girl, Patience, coming towards them too. But they both get in, they close the door, and they get down there, and Dana wonders like what this place is, because there's like this mechanical box, and otherwise it's just kind of like a gray concrete square. And she looks down and she sees this like mutilated zombie body that's like, its disembodied hand is still kind of trying to move. And she looks down at it and she's like, what the hell is that? And Marty is like, yeah, I had to dismember that guy with a trowel. And he just looks up at Dana and is like, what have you been up to? Not that, but everybody else is dead. So she tells him that like nobody else made it. And Marty is at this electrical box messing with it. And Dana is like, you figured everything. Like you knew all of this. And he's like, well, not everything, but I do know some stuff. And he's messing with that box. And suddenly this door opens in the ground. And he tells her it's an elevator. And somebody sent those things up to get us. And there's no controls in the actual elevator, but I think I can get it to go down using this box. And Dana is like, do we want to go down? Like, are you sure? And Marty again is like, where else are we going to go? So Dana agrees. She gets into the elevator and Marty presses some button on the box and the elevator starts rumbling. He gets in, and when he gets in, the zombie body that is next to him like falls in as well, or like it fell in when the door opened, whatever. So that's in there too. So they get in this elevator and it starts rumbling and it starts moving around. And at first around them is like all darkness, and they move further down and they move to the side, and eventually they stop and they see that there's like another cube, because they're surrounded by glass on both sides and all sides in this cube. And they see that there's another cube and they look at it, and Dana kind of like stares and looks in the window. And suddenly this werewolf comes out and just startles them. So there's a werewolf in the fucking cube across from them. And it's growling and it's like barking at them. And their cube keeps moving and it stops again. And this time the cube across from them has this like creepy ass ghost figure in it. Like it's like this like misty ghost flying around. And it like screams at them. And then it starts moving again. And now it stops. And they both have their backs towards each other because there's a cube on each side. And Marty looks at the one that's across from him. And he sees this little girl ballerina. And when this girl turns around, her face is just like a bunch of rows of circular razor sharp teeth. Like it's fucking terrifying. And Dana looks at this other creature that is like, it's inspired by Pinhead, and it has that like puzzle box that Kurt had in the basement, and she recognizes that. And she looks at it, and it's at this moment she realizes like we chose, like they made us choose which one of these things we were going to be attacked by. Like everything in the basement represented something different, and we picked which creatures we got. So their cube starts to move again. And at this point, the camera zooms out and we see that there are hundreds of these cubes, just hundreds of them everywhere. And they are just completely surrounded. And if you look closely, like you can see a few things. Like you can see the twins from The Shining are in there. There's like a Kraken in there. There's a bunch of shit. So now Sidderson and Hadley are freaking out, and Sidderson is on the phone and he's panicking, and Hadley is also on the phone and he's telling them like, do not touch her. Like he has to die first. Like she cannot be touched until a fool is taken out, or everything else goes to hell. And Wendy comes in and she's like, whatever he's been smoking, talking about Marty, immunized him from all of our shit. So that's the only reason that Marty was the only logical one, because he was not affected by the chemicals they were pumping into the place to make everybody else so fucking stupid and do all these stupid horror tropes, because Marty was smoking weed and it saved his ass. So in the cube, they find which cube that they're in, and Marty and Dana are like hugging and kind of just waiting. And eventually the elevator door opens and it's this guy holding them at gunpoint, and he's telling them to step out. But at first he tells just Dana to step out because again, they want to kill Marty. And they tell Dana to step out, but then suddenly that zombie body that is on the floor, the hand comes out and it grabs the guy's ankle, and that causes him to turn and start shooting it. And while he's distracted, Dana and Marty rush him and they knock this guy out, and they take his gun, and they also take one of the knives that the zombie had. So now they have weapons, and they walk out and they look around, and it seems like they're in like an office building, and they're in this hallway where there's like 4 elevators on this side and 4 elevators on this side. And they can hear footsteps coming towards them. Like there's like a SWAT team coming for them. And as that's happening, they hear this voiceover, and it's this woman, and it's telling them, you shouldn't be here. This should have gone differently, and I can only imagine your confusion. But what's happening is part of something bigger and older than anything that you have ever seen. And I know that horrible things have happened to you tonight, but it is nothing compared to what came before and what lies below. And now Sitterson and Hadley are watching them as the SWAT teams are coming for them, and they're making their way through the halls. And now this voice continues, and it's saying, like, it's our task to placate the ancient ones, and it's yours to be offered to them. Please forgive us and let us get this over with. So Marty and Dana hear these footsteps, and they run into this little like control center that is at the center, like at the top of the room. And they run in and they lock themselves in, and the SWAT team shows up and starts like shooting at the glass. So they all duck down, but Dana notices these cameras in this little control center, and the cameras show all of the different cubes that are in those elevators. And she notices that there's like a bunch of buttons, and she sees one big red button, and she looks at Marty and he kind of just nods, and Dana says, "Let's get this party started." And she presses that red button. And now outside we see the team, they all pause because they start to hear the elevators all like rumbling and moving, and they look around, and all of a sudden they just hear ding. And all 8 elevators open up at once, and all these creatures start to come out, and it is utter fucking carnage. I think this is one of the greatest scenes in a horror movie ever. Like, just the way, like, between seeing them all in the cubes and now seeing all the creatures come to life and attack everybody, this is one of the greatest scenes in horror cinema. It's so fucking iconic. It's so great with all the creature design of all of these creatures. It's so good. There's like a giant snake. There's fucking dinosaurs. There's flying shit, flying creatures. They look like the creatures from The Mist. It's just so fucking chaotic. And eventually, like, another SWAT team shows up to that hallway, and now everything's covered in blood. Like, it was once white, it's now red. And they see these 2 zombies eating one guy, and the zombies look up and see the team, and then suddenly the elevator doors ding and open again, and more creatures come out. So they're not even done yet. So inside Control, the window is now covered with blood, so they can't sit out, but Marty and Dana are sitting there. And now we see some more creatures come out of this elevator. So we see that like pinhead type thing. We see this giant bug. We see this group of killers that is, I think, modeled after the Strangers. They have like these white masks on, and now these creatures again are just taking everybody out. And we zoom out and we see all the chaos happening on the camera monitors, and like Sitterson and Hadley can see this from their lab, and like people are being set on fire, like people are being suffocated and tortured. There's a clown in one of the cameras. And again, in the main office, they're talking about like all the sectors are down, and they're absolutely panicking. And then suddenly the power goes out and comes back on, and somebody starts banging at the door, like at the main lab door, and they're trying to get in. Now, back where Dana and Marty are, this giant creature, this like big bat-like creature, flies through the window and busts the glass. And now it's in there with them, and it sees the 2 of them. So they end up running, and they have to escape. And as they're running, they obviously see all these other creatures just like taking out all these other people. There's like this little girl singing a song while she's attacking somebody. There's a group of zombies that are walking towards them. There's a werewolf. There's a unicorn that impales somebody with its horn. It's nuts. And eventually the elevators all open again, but this time the only creature that comes out is Patience Buckner. Everybody else is loose. So that little girl, Patience, with her one arm, kind of fucking limps and stumbles out of this elevator. So back in the main lab, we see that the creatures have broken in. They've gotten in, and Truman is attacked and killed. And he kind of like, as he's being killed by this group of zombies, he like pulls a grenade or something, and he like sacrifices himself to blow the creatures up. And the blow of him blowing himself and the creatures up shoots Hadley back. So like Hadley kind of flies back, and Sitterson meanwhile is trying to like override something to open this other door. And this is like probably my favorite part of the movie. This is such poetic justice because Hadley is kind of like laying there being knocked out by this bomb, and there's like a cloud of smoke in front of him, and suddenly he starts to hear something wet. Like something wet sounding, and this dramatic music plays as the merman emerges from the smoke and comes towards him. And it's like he wanted to see a merman so bad, and this is not how he meant it, but be careful what you wish for. And he just looks at this thing and he's like, "Ah, come on." And the thing attacks him and starts eating him. And it's so iconic because it blows blood out of its fucking blowhole. Like the merman has a blowhole on its back, and it literally blows blood out of it everywhere as it eats this guy. And Sitterson and Wendy are just watching this, like in just fucking awe. And eventually Sitterson is able to override this thing, and this like trap door opens up in the floor. But as they're going to get in, this giant tentacle bursts through the roof and grabs Wendy and takes her away. So she's fucking dead. And Sitterson ends up going into this trap door by himself. So he gets down below and he starts running, but as he's running, he is suddenly stabbed by Dana. So Dana and Marty have gotten down there as well. Dana stabs him, and Sitterson is like shocked, and like Dana's shocked, and they're both looking at each other like, hi. And Sitterson just looks at her and tells her that you need to kill him, talking about Marty, and he dies. So Marty just looks at Dana, and for some reason he gives her the gun. He gives her the gun and is like, it's easier with this. I think like to kill the next person, I guess, because she stabbed this guy and is obviously in shock by it. So he gives her the gun and they run off, and they eventually get to this like circular looking room, and it looks ancient. Like there's like pillars everywhere, and each of these pillars has a carving in it. And again, there's 5 of them, and this is kind of what we had seen a bit of earlier, but now we see them fully. And Dana realizes that they're us. Like I should have seen it like you saw it, talking to Marty. This is a ritual sacrifice. Like they want to see us punished. And Marty asks, punished for what? And suddenly a voice chimes in and says, for being young. And the director comes out, and it's Sigourney motherfucking Weaver. It's Sigourney Weaver. Like they got her to be in this movie. At first they wanted Bruce Campbell for this, because I think that would have been really appropriate, again, considering this movie is like heavily modeled after The Evil Dead, but he wasn't available. But they got Sigourney, Ellen fucking Ripley? Are you kidding me? Like what a bad bitch. So they got her to be in this movie, which is insane. So the director goes on to explain how it's different in every culture, but they always require youth. And there must be at least 5. So we have the whore. She's corrupted. She dies first. So we see that stone etch, and we see Jules being killed. So that's the one that they were talking about. And then we have the athlete. We have the scholar, the fool, and all of them have to suffer and die at the hands of whatever horror they raise, leaving the last to live or die as fate decides, the virgin. So the athlete was Kurt, the scholar was Holden, and the fool, of course, was Marty. And the virgin is meant to be Dana. And she looks at her, and Dana is like, virgin? Like she's confused because she's obviously not a virgin. We know that from the beginning. And the director is like, we work with what we got. So like, it's not even accurate. And they ask her, what if you don't pull it off? And she tells them that they rise. And when they ask who, the place starts to rumble. And she says, what's beneath us? The ancient ones, the gods that used to rule the earth. And as long as they accept our sacrifice, they remain below. But other rituals have all failed. Like, and as we saw, the one in Japan and Stockholm and all that, the other rituals have all failed. And now it starts to kind of rumble more aggressively as she's saying this. And she tells them that the sun is coming up in 8 minutes. And if you live, the rest of the world will end. And Marty kind of just looks at her and is like, maybe that's how it should be. Like, if you got to kill my friends to survive, maybe that's what should happen. And the director says, we're talking about the agonizing death of every human soul on the planet, including you. So you can die with them or you can die for them. And Marty is just like, oh, they're both so enticing. And now behind Marty, we see that Dana has lifted up the gun. She's raised the gun and she's pointing it at him. And he turns around and sees this and he's shocked. And she's like, the whole world, Marty. And the director tells her, like, there's no other way. You have to be strong. Like, you have to do this. And Dana starts to cry and she says sorry. And behind her, we see a werewolf emerging. And Marty sees this first and he just says, so am I. Like, sorry, like I'm sorry too. And suddenly the werewolf lunges and it bites Dana on the neck and it attacks her and it gets her on the ground. And this causes the gun to fly. And Marty goes for it, but the director goes for it too. So now they're fighting over the gun and Marty manages to get it and he shoots the werewolf, which causes it to run away. And now the director grabs the gun from him and hits Marty, and this causes him to fall, and he kind of is on like the edge because on the ground like there's openings and it's below, like it's where the ancient ones are. So he's kind of on the edge of this. And the director gets on top of him and so now the two of them are physically fighting right on the fucking edge. And now Dana looks up and she sees another creature coming. So something else is coming and she sees this and she tries to call out for Marty. And he gets on top of the director at this point and he's fighting her, like they're flipping back and forth. And he turns when she calls his name and sees that Patience fucking Buckner is coming. And he sees that and he grabs the director and turns. So now that she's on top of him and Patient shows up behind them with an axe and axes the director and kills her. And Marty gets up and kicks them, and they both go off the edge of the ledge and they die. And as this happens, everything starts to shake. And Marty goes over to sit with Dana, and they sit on these stairs that are between the Fool and the Virgin pillars, appropriately, because that's the two of them. And Dana just says, I don't even think Kurt has a cousin, which is hilarious. Like, that's your first thought after all of this. And Marty tells her, I'm sorry. And Dana says, I'm also sorry that I almost shot you. Like, I probably wouldn't have. And Marty says, it's okay. I get it. And he lights up a joint and he shares it with her. Because, like, if he's going to go out, he's obviously going to go out smoking. Like, that's his thing. And he says to her, I'm sorry I let you get attacked by a werewolf and then ended the world. Just casual things to be sorry about. And Dana tells him, you were right. Humanity, it's time to give somebody else a chance. And the place starts to crumble around them, like starts to shake more aggressively and crumble. And Marty just says, giant evil gods. And he smokes his fucking joint. And Dana is like, I wish I could have seen them, like at least seen them. And Marty is like, that would have been a fun weekend. And the two of them laugh as the place starts to shake even more aggressively. And the two of them hold hands as everything around them collapses. And we see the cabin is like kind of the center of all of this. And the cabin collapses in on itself. And we see this giant hand shoot up and just come right down on the camera. And we cut to black and the movie ends. So the world literally ended. I love this movie because I love a fucking hopeless ending. Like literally everybody dies. Everybody, not even just the characters, the whole world, everybody is fucking taken out. And I love how this was all foreshadowed in the van when Marty is going on this like philosophical rant and he's like, society needs to crumble, but we're all too chicken shit to accept it. And in the end, he ends up being the one that's like, yeah, maybe this needs to happen. So like, I'm not going to sacrifice myself. Fuck that. Like, let's end humanity, which like, we are the worst things that happen to the fucking earth. Humans are. Like, we destroy the fucking earth. We do terrible things. So, I mean, Marty might be onto something here. I love this movie so much. Again, I love how it takes all these classic horror tropes, but it completely spins it and makes it something else. Like, oh no, the reason that they're so stupid is because they're being puppeteered and controlled by something that needs these rituals to take place to placate the ancient gods. Like, it is so creative. I remember watching this and being like, this is one of the most creative movie plots I've seen in a long time. And I honestly think this might be one of the most creative movie plots in horror history, like period. Like, again, because you can tell that this movie was written by people who love horror movies. Like, there's a lot of homages and stuff. And like, you could just tell that they deeply love horror cinema and they use that to they make fun of it, but like in a good way. So there's a wiki fandom that you can go to. If you search Cabin in the Woods creatures or Cabin in the Woods monsters, it'll take you to this wiki fandom where it gives a breakdown of all the creatures that you see. And like, you can click on a lot of them and see where they appear. Cause some of them, it's just like very blurry images of them like just in that little cube, but it's still there. But when he's standing on like with the whiteboard in back of him, these are the creatures that are on that. We have alien beast, angry molesting tree, which is a homage to Evil Dead, which this movie is based on, of course. We have the bride. I'm assuming that's based on Frankenstein. Clowns, deadites, also based on Evil Dead. Demons, dismemberment goblins, the doctors, dolls, dragon bat, giant snake, Hell Lord, the Huron, Jack-o'-lantern, Kevin. That's fucking hilarious. It's just Kevin. That's fucking comedic gold right there. The merman, of course, what Hadley wanted. Mummy, mutants, the reanimated, reptilius, Sasquatch / Wendigo / Yeti. They just loop them all into one right there. The Scarecrow folk, sexy witches. I would have loved to have seen them. Snowman, Sugar Plum Fairy, twins, which I clocked them in the, when you see all of them in the cubes. Unicorn we saw. Vampires, werewolf we definitely saw. Witches, not to be confused with sexy witches. There's a difference. Wraiths, zombie redneck torture family, and just regular zombies. Now, we see a lot of other creatures in this movie, and they're all listed here too. And again, you can like kind of click on them to see what they look like and see these images. So we have like slow walking creepy girl, which we saw that little girl who was like singing and attacking somebody. Balding menace. which that they just have circled like part of the cube, which like I don't see anybody who's balding in there, but I think it's hilarious that they call it that. But they have so many: face peeler, floating leech creature, giant alligator, garden gnome boy. Like there's so many different ones. Gladiator demon, Japanese floaty girl. That's the one that was attacking the Japanese schoolgirls. The Kraken, rabid dogs, the old man, the suffocators. Like there's so much lore behind this movie and the creatures. I think there's actually like a book, like a book to go with the movie that describes all of the creatures too. Like there's so much lore and it's just so cool. And again, like I love when a plot is creative like this. Like I really appreciate that. So shout out to Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard, because I think this movie is fucking brilliant. I think it's so creative. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Like I really think it is a great movie. They also wrote this script in 3 days. Like imagine that. They sit down. It was like over a weekend apparently, because I think the two of them had like a failed project before this, and they kind of were like, oh, we need to do something good. Like we need to get our shit together. And they like locked themselves in a room for a weekend and wrote the script in like 3 days or less, which is fucking insane. So shout out to them. Honestly, just so creative. It was just so different. Like, it's just so different. We had never really seen anything like this before, and we really haven't seen much like it since. And like, I don't think it could ever be duplicated. I don't think it could be replicated. It's iconic. It's great. Yeah, that was Cabin in the Woods. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks for sticking around. Definitely fits the theme of Friendsgiving, friends needing to survive a terrible situation. It turns out nobody survives. The whole world dies. The whole world ends. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you haven't yet given me a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to me, it would be super helpful. Helps push me out into the algorithm and find other people to join our lovely little growing community we have here. So on Wednesday, we are going to complete our Final Destination franchise. So we'll talk about the next 3 movies. And then on Friday next week, we are going to talk about Stay Alive, which is a highly requested episode, a classic 2000s core movie, and I'm so excited. So until then, you guys know where to find me. It's horror_chronicles on TikTok and Instagram. I post every day, so you can keep up with me there. And until next time, watch more horror movies and stay spooky, my friends.